Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Time with Junebug. That's me. And my hat blends perfectly in with the background, so I look kind of weird, but it's a bit chilly and rainy today in Michigan. But anyway, the case I am talking about today, I discovered from you guessed it, a People magazine. As many of you know, have been following the saga very intensely, I'm guessing. When we moved here, we noticed they just kept sending People magazines in the mail. Sometimes we throw them away, sometimes we try to send them back. We never ordered these, but they kept sending them to our house. So eventually I just caved and started reading pages of it. And I would like to say, after 3 years, about 3 years, the People magazines have stopped coming to my house. Anyway, so this will probably be my last case I learned about from a People magazine. Anyway, today, this case is newer compared to like what I normally cover, where there's maybe like 3 black and white photos of everyone involved, like maybe one of the victim, one of a cop, and then one of like a field or something. So this is actually like colored photos, like takes place in modern times. But I also didn't realize when I learned about this case, which again isn't a ton of info from the People magazine. It was like 2 pages for their like little true crime section they have. I don't know what it's called, but they have like a little crime section in there. I did realize how controversial this case is. I don't know if controversial is the right word, but a lot of very split opinions. And I haven't seen something like that for a case like this before. But you maybe have heard of this. I had not, which is a common theme on this channel. But today we are going to talk about Tanya Nicole Kach. If I go between Tanya and Tanya, I'm sorry. I've heard different sources from different news outlets when I was doing research of this. Her name is spelled Tanya. So that's why I'm like, is it Tanya or is it just a different way to spell Tanya? And the news outlets, again, I heard different speakings. And then her last name, Kach, it's spelled Kach. So I don't know if it's Kach or I've heard Cash before. I'll probably just call her Tanya or Tanya. This took place February 1996 to about March of 2006. And I tell the age in case anything with children bothers you. So this case starts when Tanya's 14 and ends when she is 24. And this takes place in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. And I guess the tiny silver lining is it is fortunately solved. We know who the culprit is. Now, I do want to note before we dive too deep, I will be doing pretty much a Cliff Notes version of this due to her writing her own book about it, like a memoir. I think she co-wrote it with her lawyer, I believe. So if you want like more details, obviously go check out the book. I'll probably have a link in the description box below. So just want to point that out. Obviously, I'm not going to offer as many details as her own book would. Oh, the book is called, by the way, Memoir of a Milk Carton Kid, the Tanya Nicole Kach story. Pretty self-explanatory. And it was a New York Times bestseller. And again, I'll try to link it below. So Tanya Nicole Kach was born October 14th of 1981. And I'm sorry, Pennsylvania, but she was born in Monongahela. She was born in Pennsylvania to Jerry Kach and Sherry Conk. What is up with these names? So she was born to Jerry and Sherry in Pennsylvania. How about that? And from what I could see, I think she was an only child. Not 100% sure. Now, I didn't see a ton on her early years. Granted, she wasn't very old when this happened, but still. Now, her parents would later divorce, and in middle school, Tanya had issues with bullies, I saw. Just it wasn't a great time, middle school wasn't, which I don't think it's wonderful for anyone, but it just seemed extra worse for her. She also had struggles with her new school because she was living with her mom, but she now lives with her dad, Jerry, and switching schools in middle school sounds horrible enough, but then her parents are going through the divorce. She's dealing with bullies at both schools, and she ended up living with her dad due to her mom was said was violent and abusive towards her. And her mom rarely contacted her to see how she was, like just not the best mom from what it sounds like. So not a great time for Tanya, unfortunately. And I also did see that Tanya didn't really get along well with her dad's new fiance, which I feel like that might be a common theme. Teenage girl not liking the new spouse or partner the parent has. So I mean, that's not too out of the ordinary. Side note, I don't entirely know what her relationship with her dad was like. I don't think it was the greatest, but I don't know if it was as bad as like her and her mom's relationship. So we're jumping to late 1995, early 1996, when Tanya was attending Cornell Middle School as an 8th grader, and she was struggling. Remember, the new home, dealing with the parents' stuff and the bullies, and it's just middle school in general. But she would skip class, and she was dealing with a lot, so she would just skip class to get away from it all. But she would eventually meet and befriend the school's security guard, which to me, I didn't know that was a thing. We didn't have a security guard at my school. I don't know if it's like more of a city thing or if it's a Pennsylvania thing. Just, I didn't know they had security guards. For us, it was the middle-aged parapros like Beth, Susan, and Myrtle with the bum knee. That's kind of who looked out for us. So that's what we had. Let me know if you had a security guard at school. Honestly, doesn't seem like a bad idea, except for in this case. But the security guard she would eventually like meet and befriend from her skipping class was Thomas Hose. And I'm not entirely sure if he was like the only guard at the school, if they had multiple, but he was the security guard there. And he was 38 at the time. Now, soon after meeting, Thomas would sometimes, remember the 38-year-old security guard at the school, would sometimes pull newly 14-year-old Tanya out of her classes to just like talk to her and hang out. He would also like give her treats and snacks, like candy and stuff, and he would give her cigarettes. They'd smoke ciggies together. I think I even saw him mention about weed, because Tanya was into weed at this time. She would just unload on him about like her home life, all the situations happening. She really was just venting to Thomas. And then it got even a little bit creepier because one of the times she was skipping, or he pulled her out of class, I'm not entirely sure, he would kiss her. So that's creepy. Now, I remember seeing from a little clip that at this point, Tanya thought she was in love with him. Which, I mean, hormones, she's newly 14. Someone's giving her attention that she wants. And she thought she was in love with him. Now, over time, Thomas, would convince her to run away from her family and live with him. Wait, this is not professional, Thomas. It's not what security guards do. And unfortunately, she would do that in February of 1996. I saw February 10th on her like missing person, like NCMEC thing. I think that's when she was reported missing. I don't know if that was the exact date she went missing. So yeah, February of 1996, she was a few months into being 14, and she ran away to go live with the 38-year-old security guard at the school, who she thought she was in love with. And unfortunately, things were about to even take a darker turn at this point. As unfortunately we could have probably guessed. Because for the next 4 years, so for Tanya's would have been her high school career, she was not allowed to step foot outside of that house for 4 years. In fact, for all 4 of those years, she was trapped in his room, Thomas's room. And why in his room, you may ask? Well, 1, he's freaking creepy, but 2, he still lived with his parents and his son. Yes, he had a son. That's not good. So he would keep Tanya just in his room, so his parents wouldn't know he was keeping her there. And different sources said different things. I'm pretty sure his son stayed in the room with them. I'm not quite sure how old his son was, he was a similar age to Tanya, if he was younger, older, I don't know. Just messed up. Now, during this time, just 4 probably very, very long years for Tanya, she was forced to have sexual relations with hoes nearly every day, and she was given the bare minimum of food and water, and she was left with only a bucket to use as her bathroom. And remember, other people are in the room too. I assume they weren't in there with her obviously 24/7, but it's just so I don't know if she didn't like properly bathe for 4 years or like what was happening. She also had to learn how to like step correctly, like creep around so she wouldn't like trigger any squeaks from like the floorboards, so no one, like his parents generally, so his parents wouldn't know she was there. Ah, hello, ma'am. Okay, hi, come here. Do you want to say hello? Apparently she wanted to say hi. Yeah, you've been very needy today. Can I put you down? She's just straight up chilling. Okay, go play with your toys, please and thank you. Sorry. Now, obviously, I'm just giving the basics of the horrors she endured during this time. So if you want maybe more in-depth, I would just read her book. But after those first initial grueling 4 years, so this is the year 2000, Tanya is now 18. Now hoes, now that she's 18, would create a new identity for her. And her new name was Nikki Allen. Now he would introduce her to his parents now as his girlfriend, and she was now gonna live with them. As if she wasn't already the past 4 years. I don't know if his parents just, it totally went over their heads, if they're like, well, she's kind of young, Tom. I don't know the parents' reactions to things. I assume not thrilled. So after like being introduced as his girlfriend to his parents and saying she's not living with them, she would be allowed around the house, like when his parents weren't there, nor his son. I'm still not quite sure like what the son's doing in this time frame. Not being helpful, from what I'm guessing. He didn't tell the police or anything what was happening. So she had like more quote unquote freedom after turning 18. But in the coming years, because remember, this is 4 years into the 10, she would be quote unquote allowed to leave the house under strict circumstances. She like had a very strict curfew. I don't think she was allowed to like be alone when she left the house. I think she was allowed to have like a part-time job, like very, very part-time. I'm not entirely sure. Honestly, I couldn't find a lot of details on this case, which maybe I didn't look deep enough, but I was surprised how little there was. If you're wondering why it seems like I'm skimming, it's because there's just not a lot of info, at least outside of her book. But it was around years into this, like towards the end of her 10 years with him, that she began to realize like her relationship with him was not normal. We clearly can see it's not normal, but if you thought you were in love with him when you were 14, and that's just been your life since, you might think it's normal. So on the occasion she would be allowed to leave the house, she would end up befriending, I know your word, because she originally befriended Thomas, but it's okay, hold your horses. When she would leave the house, she would befriend a grocery store owner named Joe Spirico? Now, it was him Tanya ended up trusting enough to take him like aside and like tell her secret, which was basically saying, I'm Tanya Nicole Kach, you can find me on the missing children's website or whatever exactly she said. Like, I am a missing person, I'm not actually Nikki Allen, can you help? And he would look up to see if this person was a legit missing person, would see her like missing photos and everything along those lines, and he was like, yes, I will obviously help you. So she asked for him to call the police and come to quote unquote her house. It's not obviously her house, but is where she's forced to live. And thankfully, Joe did. He called the police, sent them to the house. So on March 21st of 2006, Tanya was finally free after 10 years. A whole decade, like, gone to this man who's supposed to be a security guard at a school, supposed to protect the children. Instead, he snatched one, essentially, and kept her just at his house for 10 years. But let's talk about the aftermath. So Thomas was obviously taken into custody, and in 2007 pleaded guilty to 3 counts of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, aggravated indecent assault, statutory sexual assault, interfering with the custody of a child, corruption of a minor, and child endangerment. So a lot of things. I do have some slight issues with the involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. Like, I don't think it was involuntary, sir. I think you knew what you were doing. But since he was found guilty of all these things, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison at the maximum. At the maximum. That's it. Which means, yes, he did serve that maximum of 15 years, but that means in 2022, so like 2 years ago, he was released and he's just out on the streets doing Thomas things. He's a registered sex offender, but he's out. Like, he served his time, he's out. He's free. I don't know what he's technically doing with his life. I don't really care. So now, Tanya. She was initially obviously really happy to be with her family again, because who wouldn't be? However, I have seen she has become quite estranged from her dad and stepmom. I don't know about her actual, like, birth mom. I don't think it's a great situation either, but she definitely became estranged from her dad and stepmom due to them thinking she is partially responsible for what happened to her. That is not what someone needs to hear in that situation. Like, Tanya's been through enough, okay? Now, many lawsuits would happen. Many. Tanya would try to sue the police and the school board for failing her. These are both dismissed. The police one, I could sort of understand. The school board, I am a bit annoyed that they didn't take any responsibility, because they obviously hired the man who's supposed to protect the children, and he snatched one of the children. I don't know if he had any other, like, anything in his background that would have pointed to that. It's just, I feel like, yes, they should have maybe been a bit more careful with who they hired. Or just, if one of their students is struggling that much, let's try to help, okay? I know, like, public schools aren't perfect by any means, but, like, could you try? Obviously, they can't necessarily control his actions, but maybe been a bit like, maybe you've done a vibe check on Thomas there or something. Now, lawsuits didn't just come from Tanya's end. They were also aimed at poor Tanya, including a former therapist. She would sue Tanya and her lawyer, who co-wrote Tanya's book, for, like, defamation. I don't know necessarily how that ended. I don't know if it was dismissed. I didn't see anything about Tanya owing a therapist money. I just saw that she was getting sued by a former therapist. And if you think that's bad, just you wait, because Tanya's own father and stepmother would sue her for the contents in her book. They were suing her for defamation, which, again, I don't quite know the outcome of the case. I don't remember seeing, like, articles about, like, Tanya wins the suit against her, or, like, Tanya owes her parents a bunch of money. Excuse me. So it kind of leads me to believe these may have been both dismissed, or maybe they're still ongoing, but that'd be a really long time. But just, I really hoped these were dismissed, because I can just kind of imagine. I hope the judge was here. Let me 1 sec. This is how I hope the judge was. Got my glasses. Okay. I hope the judge was like this. Oh. So I see you're suing your child Tanya for defamation. Now, what exactly did she say? Oh, that you were not great parents, and you kind of blamed her for being kidnapped. You blamed her for being kidnapped for 10 years. Get out of my courtroom. I kind of hope she went Judge Judy on them, or he, I don't know, whoever the judge was, or if they even made it that far, I don't know. Now, lawsuits aside, Tanya would also appear on Dr. Phil, and from what I could tell, I was only able to find 2 short clips online of her being on the Dr. Phil show. They were each like 1 minute long, because I think they were posted like 12 years ago or more, so the whole episode probably isn't on the Dr. Phil YouTube channel. And I know Dr. Phil's controversial on his own. And then I know one of her videos had the comments turned off, but then one of them had comments, and most of the comments were like, this poor woman, like, that's horrible. But like when I was doing research, like finding out like the name of her book, and I was looking at the reviews, it got good reviews, but then I went to the 1 stars, and there's so many that people think she is like responsible for what happened to her. It's horrible to say. She's gone through enough. Like, I don't necessarily know, maybe she was in a weird, odd way responsible, but at the same time, put yourself in Thomas's shoes. Not literally, don't do anything he did, but if a 14-year-old girl wants to live with you, if for some reason it was her idea, and she wants to live with you, you're not related, you're not her parental guardian, you barely know her, you should say no. And if she somehow like finds her way to your house and she like is trying to live with you like you're her knight in shining armor, you know what you should do? Say no again. And call the police. Tell them the situation. Granted, he probably didn't want to incriminate himself for kissing her, but tell them the situation. They'll learn about her home life. Maybe they'll take her out of that home. There are many, many ways this situation can be handled that doesn't involve you just having a 14-year-old girl stuck in your room using a bucket as a toilet for 4 years. Now, that seems to be the controversial opinion, but I believe Thomas is very much at fault for this. But like, just remember, if you think she is playing the victim, it's because she is the victim here, okay? You don't know it until you've lived it. Anyway, enough on my tangent. So we know where I stand. But anyway, bouncing to the future a bit, Tanya would eventually get married in 2018, and she now has a stepson and a stepdaughter. She is also now a grandma / like step-grandma to her stepson's kids. And I found her on Facebook. She can be found on Facebook. I don't know if she wants to be found, but I did find her. And she seems to be living a pretty normal life now. So that is the case of, I almost called her Ruth. No, her name is not Ruth. That is the case of Tanya Nicole Kach. And I guess let me know what you think. But remember, be nice. You have not been in her situation. And if you have, I am so sorry. Anyway, I do know what I'm covering next. I'm not gonna let you know what it is because I'm just sneaky like that, I guess. But it's a prominent one. For me, it's quite prominent. But anyway, I'll see you next time. Sorry this turned longer than I would have liked. And sorry about my little tangent. But I feel like, if a 14-year-old came up to you and asked to live with you, you should say no. I'm not saying she asked. It sounded like he did, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, see you guys next time. And thanks for tuning in for another True Crime Time. Bye.